The prisoner never spoke, not in words anyway. She watched, always unblinking, unmoving, unbothered by the cold air that seeped through the cracked bulkheads of Detention Orbit Facility 9 Gamma. They called her Asset 919 on paper, Vamp over cafeteria stew, and oh, hell no, you go in first when someone had to perform maintenance near her cell. No one volunteered, except me. Technically, I was supposed to be a systems engineer. My job description included calibrating oxygen processors, maintaining reactor cores, and pretending I knew how to fix a nuclear coffee machine built by a company that no longer existed. What it didn't include was chatting up alien prisoners. But after 72 consecutive days of reruns, recycled air, and the psychological horror that was the Monday meatloaf, curiosity found its way past my better judgment. Her cell was triple shielded, magnetic field, neural dampener, ionic lattice, redundant overkill, which meant either she was unimaginably dangerous or the people in charge were unimaginably paranoid. Or both. You don't spend 1 trillion credits to hold someone unless they're very special or very annoying. Judging by the look in her eyes, she was both. She looked like a human woman mostly, pale as starlight, hair blacker than the absence of cable, and ears that curved backward like twin crescent moons. The kind of face that didn't just haunt dreams, it left postcards. I stood at the edge of the containment field with a diagnostic pad and a cup of the station's infamous synthetic cocoa. "Good evening," I said, because what else does one say to a possibly homicidal alien? "Or morning. Honestly, the clocks are lying, and I'm not convinced time's real anymore." She didn't answer. She never did. But something about the way her gaze shifted told me she was listening. I tried again. "I brought cocoa. Thought maybe you'd like to watch me drink it while contemplating how easy it would be to tear me apart." Still nothing, but her head tilted, just a fraction, enough to let me know I wasn't talking to a wall. I sat on the floor. The metal was cold and smelled like decades of burnt wiring and despair. "You know, you're not what I expected. The stories said you sucked the life from 3 ships and sang to the void while doing it." A blink. Slow, calculated. "I sang to my hydroponic basil once," I offered. "It died." I took a sip of cocoa. It was terrible. Slightly less terrible than the time I tried to fix the ship's bidet system and accidentally rerouted it to blast coolant. That had not gone over well with command. I got reassigned here, which was apparently where failed engineers and inconvenient secrets went to fade. "I'm Gregor," I said, shrugging. "Figured if I'm going to monologue, might as well put a name to it." A whisper of breath, maybe a sigh, maybe boredom, maybe the deepest form of alien scorn. The log said she'd been captured during a pirate skirmish on the edge of the Theta Draconis system. They'd found her locked in a vault with 6 unconscious pirates and 1 ship's AI that had started quoting poetry about shadows and hunger. Most of the team never made it back, but they'd brought her here in chains too heavy to carry, calling her a threat to all sentient life. She hadn't so much as lifted a finger since. I visited every other day after that, not because I was brave or stupid, though probably a little of both, but because I'd seen something in her eyes, not fury, not violence, not hunger, something older, sadder, like someone who'd waited far too long for someone else to stop pretending. I brought food once, didn't throw it, just set it down on the edge of the field and stepped back. She stared at it, then at me, then back at the food. I wasn't sure if she didn't trust it or me. Honestly, I wouldn't have trusted either. The others thought I was insane. Collins called her a black hole with cheekbones. Juno said I had a death wish. Lieutenant Parr kept asking if I was making first contact inappropriately, to which I responded, "No, Lieutenant, just exploring the boundaries of nonverbal mutual respect." That earned me toilet scrubbing duty. Again. One day, while replacing a neural capacitor, I caught her watching me. Really watching. Head tilted, gaze unblinking, like someone trying to understand why a fly insists on smashing itself against the same glass. "You ever wonder if they're wrong about you?" I asked. She didn't answer. Of course she didn't. But she blinked. And when someone hasn't blinked in 21 visits, that counts as a novel. The capacitor sparked in my hand. I dropped it with a very dignified yelp, followed by some high-quality dance moves as I stomped on the tiny flame. She almost smiled. It was that almost that undid me. By week 5, Command decided she was a liability. The orders came quietly, coded in high-clearance files routed through encrypted channels. Asset 919 is to be terminated. Containment breach protocol as cover. Paperwork, elegant and sterile. I stared at the order in my bunk for an hour. Then I stood up, found my boots, and walked to the maintenance bay. Some part of me still thought I was just fixing a glitch, that this was a mistake, that someone would stop me before I did something career-ending. They didn't. The tools I took weren't special: a field disruptor, a manual override key, one ancient, oil-slicked bolt cutter that looked like it had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. I told myself I was just going to inspect her cell one last time. She was sitting again, silent, watching. "They're coming," I said, unlocking the outer panel. "To erase you. Clean slate. Bye-bye, scary space lady." No response. I reached for the containment override. "You could run," I added. "I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying, if someone hypothetically turned off the dampeners, there's a 30-second delay before the emergency fields kick in." The bolt cutter clanged once. Then again. Then the lights flickered. Alarms didn't go off. That was the trick. Do it slow enough, and the system thinks it's routine maintenance. It's when things go fast that you get fire, sirens, and angry commanders asking why half the station is underwater. The final lock disengaged with a low hiss. She stood, graceful, silent, close. I didn't flinch. Much. She stepped past me, paused, and then she touched my shoulder. Light, barely a breath. Then she was gone. No dramatic exit, no flare of power, just the quiet, eerie stillness of a presence that once was and now wasn't. I stood there for a long time. 3 days passed. I didn't get arrested, probably because the files mysteriously corrupted and the surveillance logs got rewritten by a cleaning droid named Mop7, who'd recently become sentient and very into soap operas. I assumed that was it, until the knock on my door. Not the "hey buddy, open up" kind, more the kind that makes metal groan and air pressure question its life choices. I opened the door. She was kneeling, not bound, not captured, kneeling. And she looked up at me with a gaze I hadn't seen in any file, any report, any horror story. It wasn't submission. It was something far stranger. Choice. She didn't say anything, which under normal circumstances I might have taken as terrifying. You know, given the galactic bounty on her head, the deeply unsettling way she appeared without tripping a single alarm, and the fact that she had once been described in an internal report as a walking extinction event wrapped in a goddess complex. But she was still kneeling, still looking up at me like I was the one who needed saving. So naturally I panicked. I said, because that's the sort of eloquence you unleash when a vampire alien woman shows up at your door after you illegally set her free and possibly committed 17 kinds of treason in the process. "Hi," she blinked once, very slowly, like time was optional for her. Then she stood, fluid and deliberate, and stepped inside. My room was not what you'd call ambassadorial. One bunk, one terminal, 2 mismatched chairs, and a pet plant I kept forgetting to water. Also, the smell of burnt protein packs. The moment she crossed the threshold, she wrinkled her nose. "I see your taste in living quarters is aggressively mediocre," she said. I choked. "You talk now?" "I've always talked," she said, inspecting the ceiling like she was considering vaporizing it. "You just never shut up long enough to hear me." Fair point. "Okay, so why are you here? Not that I'm not flattered, but last I checked, freeing a classified prisoner isn't exactly how you land a second date." She turned back to me, and her eyes, dark and quiet, seemed older than the stars. "You set me free," she said. "No conditions, no demands, not even a question." "Right," I said, scratching my head. "Some might call that idiocy. I call it rare." I flopped into the less broken of my 2 chairs. It creaked like it had lost the will to live. "So what now? You here to thank me, repay me, extract my soul and turn it into a snack cake?" She blinked again. You think I eat souls? I don't know. The rumors are pretty vague. Something about you draining the life out of people, but it might have been a metaphor, or a very aggressive Yelp review. She stared. I shifted uncomfortably. Okay, I'll stop talking. You're not very good at that. She wandered the room like a cat in a library, touching things with the barest brush of fingers. My charging cable, my spare boots, the empty ramen container I was pretending didn't exist. She paused at the wall terminal, tapped it once, and brought up a star map with a flick of her hand. The lines shifted, constellations blooming into constellations, sectors blinking in and out like breathing. Wow, I said, standing. I didn't even know it could do that. It couldn't, she replied. She marked a system with her finger, a place way outside human territory, deep in the reach where starships went missing and signals screamed in static. They'll be looking for me, she said. Yeah, I agreed. And me. I imagine my boss is already drafting the passive-aggressive memo of the century. She turned. They'll send bounty hunters, mercenaries, drones, maybe worse. Well, I said, grabbing my emergency pack and the snack bars I kept hidden behind my dirty laundry. Guess we're going on a road trip. She narrowed her eyes. You're coming? You showed up at my door after escaping a maximum security orbital prison, I said. You can teleport across space. I can barely cook rice. But for some reason, you're here. So yeah, I'm coming. She didn't smile, but there was a small shift in her expression. Something warmer, or at least less murdery. Fine, she said. But if you snore, I will drop you into a gravity well. I snore melodically, I said, slinging my bag over my shoulder, like a lullaby made of chainsaws. We left quietly. She cloaked us through the station sensors like it was a casual Tuesday. I said goodbye to Mop 7, who was deep into his latest soap opera arc involving betrayal, forbidden love, and a surprisingly poignant subplot about furniture. Our getaway ship was a rust bucket named the Indignant Ferret, which I bought from a smuggler with a twitch and a passion for firecrackers. It groaned when we entered. She looked around, unimpressed. This flies? She asked. Technically, I said. It falls in style. We jumped systems by nightfall, skipping past trade lanes and dipping into the kind of space where laws became suggestions and ethics were currency. She sat mostly in silence, occasionally murmuring directions like she was navigating by instinct. We stopped once to refuel at a gas giant outpost run by a robot named Dave, who only accepted payments in riddles. I told him a joke about quantum ducks. He laughed so hard his internal server crashed. Back on board, she watched me try to make tea. That's not how you steep it, she said. I didn't realize you were a tea expert. I am 3,000 years old. I have tasted the dew of comet ice and boiled thunder root in the forges of Ilm. I held up the plastic packet. Well, this is lemon zinger. She sipped it. Her face was unreadable. Then she said, It's fine. Wow, I said. High praise from an immortal predator. Technically, I'm not immortal. Well, technically, I'm not good at cooking. But we both pretend. She didn't laugh, but she relaxed a little. That night, I found her sitting at the front viewport, watching the stars like they were memories she didn't want to revisit. Why did you come back? I asked. I don't know, she said quietly. I've been bound, caged, hunted. No one ever looked at me the way you did. Like you weren't a threat. Like I wasn't alone. I sat beside her, not touching, not speaking. Outside, the stars kept spinning, and somewhere far away, something began to follow us. I woke to the sound of the ship insulting me. Alert! The indignant ferret droned in a voice I'd programmed during a particularly bad night of caffeine withdrawal and existential despair. You snored for 4 hours and 17 minutes. I've logged it as a sonic hazard. Good morning to you too, I mumbled, wiping sleep from my face with the corner of my shirt. You jealous I got lungs? Jealous implies a desire to possess. I desire your silence. Same, buddy, same. She was already awake. She didn't sleep much, said rest was a concept tied to safety, and she hadn't known either in a long time. I found her at the ship's nose again, staring out the viewport at a nebula, the color of bruised fruit in old royalty. We're being followed, she said without looking. Right. And good morning to you. I made instant algae porridge if you want to pretend you're being punished. They're using passive warp signatures, she continued. 3 ships. One of them is cloaked. High-grade military stealth. Black cell. I squinted at my console. Wow, I didn't get any of that. Can you dumb it down for the guy who once electrocuted himself with a heated blanket? They want me, she said. Well, yeah. You're ancient, terrifying, and you sort of escaped an ultra-secure detention block with the elegance of a disappearing act and none of the paperwork. She turned to face me. They'll stop at nothing. That's fine. I've got a wrench in the blind optimism of someone who doesn't understand consequences. She blinked slowly. You are very human. I choose to take that as a compliment. I steered the ship toward a system I remembered from a supply run. Namaran Vis, known for its rotating black market, suspiciously cheap fusion cores, and a noodle vendor who ran a protection racket on the side. If we were going to shake pursuers, we needed chaos and noodles, preferably at the same time. The ferret groaned as we entered orbit. This is not a good idea. You say that about everything. You once tried to fix a coolant leak with chewing gum and optimism. Did it work? You almost blew up the starboard reactor. But I didn't, and that's what matters. We docked. The port was a mess of lights, noise, languages being shouted over industrial fans, and a smell that could only be described as cooked anxiety. I loved it. She, on the other hand, looked like she was trying not to disintegrate anyone by accident. A vendor tried to sell me a genetically modified hamster with wings. I almost said yes just to see what would happen. She gave me a look. The hamster vendor fled. We navigated through the main corridor, where neon signs flickered like tired dreams, and a techno-monk tried to convert us to something involving mushrooms and orbital meditation. Eventually, we found the contact I needed, a man named Glav. Glav looked like someone had taught a sack of potatoes how to smoke cigars and gamble. Gregor, he said, grinning, I thought you were dead or in jail. I hear that a lot. I brought company. He glanced at her, and the cigar fell out of his mouth. She's not going to bite, I said, unless provoked or bored. She didn't react. Glav wiped his brow. You got heat on you? Enough to fry an asteroid omelet. He led us to a back room cluttered with parts, maps, and what I think was a musical instrument made of bones and a toaster. He pulled up a map of the sector and pointed to a spot labeled Deep Rot. This here's an old listening post, he said. Pre-Federation, shielded, off the books. No one goes there because the place is cursed. Cursed how? I asked. He shrugged. Ghosts, screaming walls, engine grease that moves when you're not looking. You know, standard haunted space nonsense. I turned to her. Thoughts? She nodded. Sounds quiet. Then it's perfect, I said. Also, if we get haunted, I vote we name the ghost. I've always wanted a roommate named Dennis. We left with a stolen jump key and a crate of mystery juice Glav swore would boost our engines or kill us instantly. Odds were 50-50, not the worst gamble I'd taken that week. The jump to Deep Rot wasn't smooth. Something in the slipstream kicked us like a grumpy mule, and we emerged into a dead system where the stars felt like they'd forgotten how to shine. The station floated ahead, silent, dark, ancient, like a wound in space that had scabbed over. We docked with the elegance of a drunk spider, and I suited up. She didn't need air, apparently, or a suit, or a helmet. When I asked her about it, she said something about cellular phase modulation and adapted respiratory matrices. I nodded like I understood. I didn't. Inside, the station was quiet. Too quiet. No lights, no systems, just the low hum of ancient machines still dreaming of their purpose. She moved ahead, leading us through long dead corridors and sealed doors that opened for her like they remembered her. You've been here before, I said. A long time ago, she replied, before everything burned. We found the control center. I tried to power it up. The console coughed at me and declared I had offended its ancestors. Give me a minute, I muttered. You said that last time, the ferret chimed in from orbit. Then you broke a comm relay with your forehead. I ignored it and tried again. Sparks, static, then flickering lights, a pulse, and then a sound, a voice. Not hers, not mine. Something cold. They're coming, it whispered. He hungers. The station trembled. I looked at her. I thought this place was abandoned. It was, she said, but nothing stays buried forever. Outside, in the dark between stars, something stirred. The lights on the station flickered again. Then again. Then they stayed off, which felt like an editorial decision. Great, I muttered. Haunted station, malfunctioning power, mysterious whispery threats. All we need now is a cursed vending machine, and this'll be a full house. She didn't answer. She was standing still, utterly still, like she was listening to something that I couldn't hear, or maybe negotiating a ceasefire with her past. You good? I asked cautiously. She finally blinked, then said, This place was once a temple. I'm sorry, I said. It really doesn't look like a temple, unless your people worship dust, bad smells, and the sound of dripping water. Not that kind of temple, a convergent site for energy, memory, time. I paused. I have questions, but I'm afraid if I ask them, my brain will dissolve into a fine mist. She moved ahead without answering. I followed because I'm the kind of idiot who hears things like energy, memory, time, temple and thinks, hey, let's investigate. We passed through a long corridor where the walls were covered in what looked like fossilized circuitry, old alien script woven with living metal. Some of it pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat with stage fright. My handheld scanner started glitching, blinking between readouts that made no sense. Either this thing thinks we're surrounded by 37 life forms, I said, or it's finally given up and decided to mess with me for sport. She stopped. We're not alone. Well, yes, that's what I just said. 37 life forms. Those aren't life forms, she said. They're echoes. Echoes. Residual impressions. What's left behind when emotion and memory bleed into the structure of space. Okay, I said, gently tapping my scanner. So the station is emotionally haunted. Got it. One of the doors ahead opened with a hiss that sounded suspiciously like a sigh. Beyond it lay a chamber filled with what I assumed were meditation pods, or possibly high-end alien coffins. They were arranged in a spiral, and in the center stood a tall structure shaped vaguely like a tuning fork, built by someone with a grudge against geometry. She approached it and pressed her hand to one of the prongs. The entire room shimmered. Suddenly, everything changed. I wasn't in the chamber anymore. I was standing on a platform floating above an impossible city. Towers rose and fell like breathing. Stars wove themselves through the skyline, and roads moved underfoot like rivers of glass. She stood beside me unchanged, watching it all with a look that was very nearly sadness. This, she said, was what we once were. I turned slowly. Is this your homeworld? One of them, she said, before the sundering. The sundering, I repeated, trying to sound like I understood. She gave me a sideways glance. The event that fractured time, collapsed the harmonics of our stars, and scattered my people into exile. Right, yes, that's sundering. She exhaled through her nose. Your sarcasm is your defense mechanism. Correct. That and duct tape. The illusion faded, and we were back in the chamber. The tuning fork pulsed faintly. I touched it, out of pure human curiosity and extremely poor decision-making skills. Instantly, I was overwhelmed by a vision. I saw her, chained, screaming, surrounded by scientists and guards in sterile armor. I saw them probing her, testing her, draining her, measuring her, and through all of it, a quiet, constant thought. Survive, survive, survive. When I let go, I was shaking. They really did a number on you. They feared what they didn't understand. I looked at her. And now? They still don't understand, but now they also want control. My comm crackled. It was the ferret. Hey, folks, not to interrupt your nostalgia trip, but we've got incoming. 3 ships, military signature. One of them is broadcasting a message. You're not going to like it. Let's hear it, I said. The voice that came through was oily and too calm. This is Commander Vask of the Sovereign Enclave. Return the subject immediately or be designated hostile and eliminated. I hate how all their threats sound like automated customer service, I muttered. Press 1 to be vaporized. She moved to the console and ran her hand along the ancient interface. This station can shield us. For a while. A while is good, I said. A while gives me time to make bad decisions. What do you propose? I looked at the tuning fork. Does this thing only do visions of traumatic memories? Or can we use it to give the enemies a good, old-fashioned psychic slap? She paused. In theory, it could amplify emotional resonance across the local spatial medium. I'm going to pretend that means yes. She touched the device again, more deliberately this time, and the chamber began to glow. Lights flickered back to life, and a deep hum filled the air. It sounded like a choir made of thunder and regret. Outside, the enemy ships closed in. Ready to do something stupid? I asked. Always, she said. I linked the station systems with our ship, routed the field emitters through the ferret's underused music array, and let the tuning fork pulse through every channel we had. The result? Every ship in range got hit with an emotional payload consisting of raw fear, heartbreak, and the existential horror of being alone in the universe. One of the enemy ships veered off immediately. Another started spinning in place, broadcasting a distress signal to a command center that didn't respond. The last one, Vasquez, held position, but you could tell something was rattled. His voice came back over comms, strained now. You think fear will stop us? We created fear. I rolled my eyes. Wow, that's not a threat. That's a tagline for a bad movie. They will send more, she said. Stronger, angrier. Then we make sure they find a trail of bad memories and awkward voicemail messages. She nodded slowly. You're a strange man. Strange is all I've got. We powered down the resonance device before it cooked the walls. The silence afterward was heavy, but not unwelcome. Where do we go now? I asked. There's a place, she said, farther out, past the reach of the Enclave, a world forgotten even by its own sun. Let me guess, haunted? Possibly, she said, but peaceful. Sounds like a trap. I'm in. We landed on a planet that didn't have a name so much as a sound, something like a cough in the back of the throat followed by a wistful sigh. I named it Kevin. She didn't object, which I took as a sign of progress in our ongoing battle over nomenclature. Kevin was cold, gray, and covered in ruined structures older than most galaxies. Massive pillars jutted from the ground like ribs of some long-dead god. The wind howled, but politely, like it didn't want to wake the neighbors. Is this peaceful? I asked. By galactic standard, she said. Only 3 assassination attempts in the last epoch. Sold, I said. Let's build a beach house and call it early retirement. We made camp near a structure that looked vaguely like a fallen obelisk mated with a wind chime. It hummed in its sleep, but I'd learned by now not to ask too many questions about ancient architecture that might or might not be sentient. That was how you got cursed. I fixed the ferret's external stabilizers while she communed with the local echoes. She said the planet remembered things, but only if you were gentle. I tried whispering sweet nothings to a rock. It didn't work, but I think the rock appreciated the effort. At night we shared warmth, not because it was romantic, though maybe it was a little, but because the temperature dropped so fast I was starting to suspect the planet held a grudge against thermodynamics. She didn't sleep still, but she watched the stars like they owed her something, and I didn't ask what. One morning being a generous term since the sun flickered like an old light bulb on caffeine, she said, "They won't stop." People rarely do, I replied, especially when they think they're owed something. I'm a myth to them now, a weapon, a threat, a relic. I poured us both a mug of rehydrated mushroom coffee. And what do you think you are? She stared into her cup. Free. Well, I said. Welcome to the club. Dues are paid in regret and bad decisions. We meet on Thursdays. A week passed. No ships, no signals. The galaxy, in its infinite drama, seemed to have turned its attention elsewhere. We kept moving, exploring ruins, documenting things, sometimes arguing about the difference between ritual stones and very confused toilets. She laughed more. Not often, but when she did, it cracked the air like a breaking curse. Then one night, I woke up to find her gone. I panicked, naturally. I tripped over 3 rocks, fell into a shrub that might have been carnivorous, and sprinted barefoot into the cold like a lunatic trying to wrestle destiny with no pants on. Eventually, I found her at a cliff overlooking a silver lake. They're here, she said. In the distance, a ship had landed, Not the Enclave. Something else. A diplomatic model, all curves and subtle dread. A single envoy stepped out. Human, oddly enough. Dressed like a lawyer who'd lost a bet with a fashion AI. I come on behalf of the Concordant, he said. We're here to offer peace. I'm sorry, I said. Did you say peace? On Kevin? He adjusted his glasses. We've been monitoring transmissions. We believe there's a path forward. Reparations. Restoration. Amnesty. She narrowed her eyes. And the others? Disavowed, he said. The Enclave's overreach embarrassed more than a few powerful people. You were right to run. And lucky. Though I suppose luck had help. He looked at me. I gave him a thumbs up. He did not return it. I liked him less. Let's say we believe you, I said. What happens now? He held out a data crystal. Your name is cleared, her designation retracted. You're free to go. Anywhere he left without fanfare. The ship vanished into the clouds like it had never been there. She held the crystal for a long time. You're really free now, I said. She nodded slowly. And you? Oh no, I said. I'm still a mess. She laughed. Will you come with me? Only if there's food, I said. I'm a simple man. Point me toward a halfway decent noodle stand, and I'll follow you to the end of the stars. We returned to the ferret. I updated the ship's registry. Gregor and the formerly imprisoned vampire alien woman, now freely wandering and possibly dating. The system refused to accept it. I shortened it to odd pairing. She approved. We left Kevin behind. He'd been a good host, all things considered. I promised to name a cocktail after him. As we sailed through the quiet between systems, I looked over at her. She wasn't what the legends said. Not a monster, not a queen, not a god. Just someone who'd been bound too long. Someone who'd found in a bumbling human mechanic with poor hygiene and worse luck, a sliver of something unexpected. And me? I'd found purpose. Not grand or noble, just honest, real. Where to next? I asked. She smiled. Everywhere.